Leila had seen a lot in her life. Long hours, rude customers, a world that often ignored people like her. But nothing could prepare her for the little girl in the cafe. Nora sat alone, blind and trembling. Without thinking, Leila guided her to a seat, offered a cookie, a smile, a moment of comfort. Just a small act of kindness. But someone powerful was watching. Could one small act really change a life forever? If you're ready for a story of kindness, courage, and unexpected rewards, like, share, and subscribe, because what happens next will shock you. Leila's alarm went off just as the first light of dawn peeked through the blinds of her tiny apartment. She rubbed her eyes and let out a sigh, stretching out on the lumpy mattress that had been her home for the past 3 years. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Every corner of the small space told a story. The faded poster on the wall, the chipped coffee mug on the windowsill, the stack of unpaid bills neatly tucked into the drawer. Life wasn't perfect. Life wasn't fair. But it was hers, and she worked every day to make the most of it. By 24, Leila had grown used to the grind. Waitressing wasn't glamorous, but it gave her independence. It gave her pride. Each day, she stepped into the cafe with a practiced smile, ready to serve strangers who never noticed the person behind the tray. She loved her job for the small victories, the regulars who remembered her name, the rare moments when a smile was returned, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had made someone's day a little better. She moved through her morning routine quickly. Breakfast was a cup of cheap instant coffee and a slice of toast, eaten while she checked the schedule on her phone. Orders had to be memorized, trays carried without wobbling, complaints diffused without letting frustration show. It was a balancing act she had mastered over the years, but it came at a cost. Long shifts left her exhausted, aching, and often invisible to the world around her. Leila had grown used to being overlooked, not just in the cafe, but everywhere. Being black in a city dominated by faces that looked nothing like hers came with a quiet, persistent weight. People didn't always say it out loud, but she could feel it. The subtle hesitation when she approached a table, the faint unease in someone's eyes, the unspoken assumptions that whispered, "She doesn't belong here." She carried it with her like an invisible badge, a reminder that no matter how hard she worked, the world sometimes refused to see her worth, and yet she didn't let it harden her heart. Leila believed in kindness. She believed that the world could be better, even if it often proved her wrong. That afternoon, as the cafe began to fill with the steady hum of chatter, the jingle of the doorbell drew her attention. At first, she thought it was just another customer rushing in from the heat outside. But then she noticed the small figure, barely 8 years old, hesitating at the entrance. The girl's hands trembled as she gripped a worn backpack, and a white cane rested awkwardly against her chair. Nora. Leila felt her chest tighten. She had a soft spot for the vulnerable, the quiet, the overlooked. Something about this little girl made her heart ache. She moved quickly, guiding Nora to a corner table, making sure she could reach it safely. "Hey there," she said gently, smiling. "I'll help you get settled." Nora's lips quivered in a small, shy smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost swallowed by the bustling cafe. Leila knelt beside her, carefully placing a plate of cookies within reach. She showed Nora how to hold the utensils, how to feel the edge of the table to stay steady. It was a simple act, but it felt monumental. For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded, leaving only the quiet exchange of trust between two souls who understood vulnerability. And then he arrived. The cafe doors swung open, and a hush seemed to ripple through the room, though most customers barely noticed. Tall, imposing, dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of wealth and power, Richard entered. He moved with confidence, his presence commanding attention even without a word. He didn't come for the coffee. He came for something or someone else. Richard's gaze landed on the little girl first, but it quickly shifted to Leila. He watched as she guided Nora's hands, offered a reassuring smile, laughed softly at her shy attempts to joke, and treated her with the care of someone who saw more than the surface. He had never witnessed this kind of kindness, not in his boardrooms, not at galas, not even in the lives of people who had everything yet offered nothing. Leila, of course, didn't notice him. She was focused entirely on Nora, oblivious to the man whose fortune could have bought and sold most of the city outside the cafe doors. To her, this was just another day, another chance to help someone, even in the smallest way. The tension in the room was subtle but undeniable. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in fascination. There was something about her, something raw, unpolished, human, that drew him in. He leaned closer, almost whispering as if the words carried weight beyond the cafe walls. "Do you know who this little girl is?" Leila froze, heart hammering. She shook her head, unsure if she should answer, unsure if she had even heard correctly. "She's my daughter," he said, voice steady but commanding. "And what you just did, it wasn't just kindness. It was extraordinary." Leila's mind spun. Her life, simple, struggling, independent, was colliding with a world she had only glimpsed from afar. A world of wealth, influence, and privilege. And in that collision, she had no idea what awaited her. Opportunities she had never dreamed of, challenges she had never imagined, and scrutiny she had never faced. Because life outside her cafe, life beyond her small world, was not kind. The city she knew was full of doors that could slam in her face, people who judged before they saw, systems that measured her worth by her skin, not her heart. Prejudice was patient, it waited, and soon it would test everything Leila believed about herself and the world around her. But for now, there was a quiet moment. A fragile connection between a waitress and a little girl. A glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, kindness could be enough to spark change. Leila smiled at Nora, handed her another cookie and said softly, "Everything's going to be okay." She didn't know it yet, but life as she knew it was about to change forever. The ripple from this small act of care would grow into a wave of challenges, surprises and opportunities, some that would test her courage, and others that would reward her heart in ways she never imagined. The cafe buzzed around them, oblivious to the storm forming outside its doors. The world was about to remind Leila of one undeniable truth. Being kind in a cruel world comes with consequences, and sometimes the greatest rewards. Leila couldn't sleep that night. The memory of Richard's words kept looping in her mind. What you did, it wasn't just kindness, it was extraordinary. She replayed the moment again and again, wondering if she had imagined it. Could one small act really draw the attention of a man like him? Her life had been a careful balance of hard work and quiet perseverance, and suddenly, that balance felt like it was teetering on the edge of something bigger, something she didn't yet understand. The next morning, she arrived at the cafe earlier than usual, trying to focus on her usual tasks, but her thoughts kept drifting. Would Richard return? Was it possible that he even remembered her? She shook her head, telling herself to focus. Life didn't wait for daydreams, and the customers weren't going to serve themselves. It wasn't long before whispers began to circulate. A coworker, new and observant, asked her in a hushed voice, "Did you see the man who came in yesterday? That billionaire? Richard something?" Leila nodded, careful not to show too much. She didn't want gossip or assumptions to derail her. But curiosity buzzed like electricity in the air. Days passed, and Richard did return. This time, he came with purpose. He didn't just observe from afar. He approached her while she wiped down a table, a crisp folder in his hand. "Leila," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you." Leila's heart raced. She forced herself to stay composed. I'm just a waitress," she said, trying to sound casual, though her hands trembled slightly. "You're more than that," Richard said, studying her closely. "What you did for Nora, it mattered. And I want to make sure it's not wasted. It should have been a simple conversation, an offer of support, or a thank you. But nothing in Leila's world had ever been simple. The next few days became a whirlwind of attention she wasn't used to. People stared when she walked past, some in admiration, many in skepticism. Rumors began to spread, both positive and venomous. She could feel the eyes of the city on her, judging her every word, every action, every gesture. Then came the first real obstacle, subtle prejudice disguised as concern. A regular customer, a man she had served countless times, leaned over one afternoon and whispered, "You sure you can handle this?" Not everyone believes someone like you belongs in that world. Leila froze, the words striking like a cold wind. She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but she swallowed her pride. She had learned long ago that arguing sometimes only made things worse. Even her co-workers reacted differently. Some offered congratulations, hesitant and forced. Others avoided her entirely, their glances sharp with unspoken judgment. The café, once a safe space, now felt like a stage where every small mistake could be magnified. And then came the overt challenge. Leila received an invitation from Richard to visit his office. It wasn't just a meeting. It was an introduction to the world she had only seen from the periphery. Gleaming skyscrapers, polished marble floors, assistants in perfect uniforms. She felt like an intruder, like every step she took was under scrutiny. People whispered as she passed, some admiring, others muttering about her place in the world. Despite her growing unease, she met Nora again. The little girl's eyes, filled with trust and innocence, reminded her why she had acted the way she did in the first place. Nora didn't see her by the color of her skin or her humble beginnings. She saw a friend, a protector, someone who cared. And in those moments, Leila remembered who she was. Someone brave enough to be kind, even when the world tried to tell her she wasn't enough. Richard's interest was genuine, but it came with its own pressures. Meetings, introductions, and expectations piled up quickly. Leila felt out of place among people who lived in a world of privilege she had never imagined. Every interaction seemed loaded, every compliment felt tinged with surprise. She knew the whispers continued behind closed doors, questioning whether someone like her could truly belong, and the city itself became a quiet antagonist. Subtle slights, doors that closed, opportunities withheld. Things she had ignored in her normal life now felt magnified. She overheard comments about her being too ambitious or out of place. People assumed she had received her attention for reasons other than her kindness. Every step forward was met with a resistance she hadn't anticipated. Yet, despite the judgment, despite the whispers and subtle attacks, Leila persisted. She learned to navigate the world Richard had introduced her to while staying true to herself. Every challenge became a test of courage, every prejudiced remark a reminder of why she had to continue. She realized that true strength wasn't just surviving, it was thriving in the face of scrutiny, staying kind when cruelty was easy, and believing in herself when others doubted her. And through it all, she never lost sight of Nora. The little girl reminded her that the smallest acts of compassion could ripple outward in ways no one expected. Leila began to understand that the path ahead would not be easy. Racism, judgment, and societal rejection were forces she couldn't ignore, but she could face them. One step at a time, armed with heart, courage, and the knowledge that one act of kindness had already changed someone's life. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the city in gold and shadow, Leila felt both the weight of the challenges ahead and the spark of hope. She was no longer just a waitress in a cafe. She was someone who had touched a life in a way that mattered, someone who had been noticed by a world she had never dared to enter, and someone whose story was only beginning. But with every opportunity came the threat of rejection. With every open door came the risk of being pushed out. And as Leila stepped into this new world, she realized one undeniable truth. The path to change is never easy. And sometimes, the people who need kindness most are the ones watching closest, judging, doubting, and testing every move you make. Yet she moved forward anyway, because courage doesn't wait for comfort, and kindness doesn't wait for permission. The day came faster than Leila expected. The city seemed louder, sharper, as if it sensed the storm about to break. She had navigated the scrutiny, the whispers, and the subtle prejudices for weeks, but nothing prepared her for the confrontation that would test everything she had fought to protect. It began at the office Richard had invited her to. The space was vast, cold, and intimidating, every corner polished and perfect, a world apart from her cafe, her neighborhood, her life. She clutched her notebook tightly, heart pounding, hands trembling slightly. This was more than just a meeting, it was a test, and she felt every eye on her judging, questioning whether she truly belonged here. Richard stood at the end of the hall, calm as ever, yet even he seemed tense. "Leila, today is important," he said quietly. "Not just for you, but for the people who need to see that kindness matters, no matter who you are." Before she could respond, the doors to the conference room opened, and she stepped in. A group of executives, polished, wealthy, and distant, turned toward her with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. She felt their skepticism instantly, the subtle assumption that she was out of place, a visitor in a world that didn't expect someone like her to succeed. One of them, a man with a perfectly tailored suit and a thin, mocking smile, leaned forward. "We appreciate your efforts with Nora," he said, voice laced with condescension. "But are you really ready to handle responsibilities here? This isn't a café. This is business. Serious business." Leila's chest tightened, but she refused to back down. Every unfair glance, every whispered doubt, every subtle rejection she had endured fueled her. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and spoke clearly, confidently. "What I did for Nora wasn't about recognition or privilege. It was about seeing someone as human, as worthy, regardless of their circumstances. That same principle drives me every day, and it's the reason I can contribute here, just as much as anyone else in this room." A hush fell. Her words carried weight, her voice unwavering despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Some executives exchanged glances, surprised by her courage, by the undeniable truth in her conviction. But one remained silent, his expression unreadable. She recognized it, the lingering skepticism, the kind that wealth and power often carried. Then, without warning, a challenge arrived. An urgent call came through, an unexpected issue involving Nora, her health, and a school emergency. In that moment, everything collided. The expectations of Richard's world, the prejudice of those around her, and her own sense of responsibility. She could walk away, leave it to someone else, or she could act. Leila made her choice instantly. She excused herself, moving through the office with determination, ignoring the whispers, the judgment, the doubts. She reached Nora's side, helping her navigate the crisis, guiding her gently and calming her fears. Her actions were decisive, fearless, and compassionate. It was a testament to everything she stood for. Richard followed silently, observing, and for the first time, she saw genuine admiration in his eyes. Not because she had impressed anyone in the room, but because she had stayed true to herself, her values, and her heart, even under immense pressure. When the crisis passed, the executives returned, watching quietly. Their skepticism remained, but something had shifted. The courage, kindness, and integrity Leila displayed could not be ignored. She had faced prejudice, societal doubt, and personal risk, and emerged with grace and strength. Richard stepped forward, his voice filled with pride. "Leila," he said, "you've proven what I've always believed. True value isn't measured by wealth, position, or appearances. It's measured by the heart. Today, you've shown that in a way no one else could." Leila felt a rush of relief, triumph, and disbelief all at once. She had survived the ultimate test, not by conforming, not by shrinking, but by being herself, fearless, compassionate, and unwavering. And in that moment, she realized something profound. The world would always try to judge her, challenge her and test her worth, but nothing could take away the power of kindness, courage, and integrity, the qualities that had always defined her, and that would carry her through anything that came next. After the whirlwind of the office crisis and her brave confrontation with prejudice, Leila finally felt a moment of calm. The city outside buzzed as usual, unaware of the small but significant battles she had just faced. Inside, she could finally breathe, knowing that she had proven something important, not just to Richard or the executives, but to herself. Richard approached her later that afternoon. His usual composed demeanor softened with a rare warmth. "Leila," he said, "you've shown a strength and integrity that few people possess. I want you to know that your actions, your heart, are valued here. More than you can imagine." Leila blinked, swallowing the lump in her throat. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel proud, not because of money, status, or recognition, but because she had stayed true to who she was, even in the face of doubt, judgment, and bias. Over the next few weeks, Her life began to shift in ways she had never expected. Richard arranged opportunities for her to grow, not as a token of gratitude, but because he believed in her ability. She received training, mentorship, and responsibilities that expanded far beyond anything she could have imagined when she was merely a waitress in a quiet cafe. But the greatest reward wasn't the wealth or the prestige. It was the knowledge that her small act of kindness had created ripples far beyond her control. She saw Nora flourish, gaining confidence and joy, knowing that someone in her life truly cared. She witnessed the subtle change in the people around her. Co-workers who had doubted her now sought her advice. Strangers who had overlooked her now greeted her warmly, and yet not all challenges disappeared. Some people continued to question her place, some doors remained closed, and the whispers of prejudice lingered. But Leila had changed. She had learned that the world would always test you. But what mattered most was the courage to keep moving forward, the strength to remain kind, and the confidence to believe in your worth. One quiet evening, Leila returned to the cafe where it all began. She served a cup of coffee with the same care and warmth she always had, remembering the long hours, the hard work, and the moments of doubt. She smiled at the thought that a simple act, helping a little girl in need, had not only changed her life but had also reminded the world that compassion can break barriers. Richard appeared soon after. Standing quietly in the doorway, he watched her for a moment, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You've done more than I could have imagined," he said softly. "Not just for Nora, not just for me, but for everyone who sees your courage." Leila's heart swelled with gratitude. Not for him, not for his fortune, but for the affirmation that being true to herself had been enough. That kindness, courage, and integrity had the power to shape the world in ways she had never dreamed. And as she looked around the cafe, now filled with familiar faces and the quiet hum of life, she realized something profound. Her story wasn't just about survival or success. It was about the impact one person could have when they choose to act with love, compassion, and courage, no matter the odds. Leila had faced judgment, discrimination, and doubt. She had risen above it all, and in the end, the world had noticed. Not because she changed who she was, but because she never stopped being herself. The city outside would continue to challenge her, as it does everyone. But inside, Leila knew the truth. No prejudice, no doubt. No obstacle could ever diminish the power of a good heart. She smiled, took a deep breath, and stepped forward into a life she had earned, one shaped not by privilege, but by her own unwavering courage, kindness, and humanity.